It's so important for parents to get a comprehensive assessment. You need to know what's going on. Why is your child using alcohol? Why is your child using a substance like marijuana? It may be in some cases that they're medicating an underlying issue. Many of the kids that I worked with who were smoking marijuana, when I asked them to help me understand why they were using marijuana, the number one answer that came back was, it helps me with my anxiety.
I'm Summer.
And I'm Mike.
And we got married with children.
It's been 12 years since we got this gang together.
And we're still running the rapids of living with a blended family.
And sometimes that is just not easy.
If you're looking for support and tools when it comes to divorce, step-parenting, co-parenting, and giving it your best,
you're in the right place.
We're talking about everything.
You ready to get this party started?
Always. Hello, hello.
What's up, Everything Always family?
Everything Always fam is in the house.
Welcome to another episode of the Everything Always podcast.
We're so glad that you're here today.
Tough topic for today.
You know what? It might not be for you right now if you have really young kids, but it could eventually be for you. And maybe if you have teens, you might go, I don't have to worry about this.
We're going to be talking about kids that are addicted to drugs.
And alcohol or any kind of substance
that
abuse.
That would fall under drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Whatever age your kids are, we're always worrying about them, right? Whether
or
they're
the path that led them to think that this was like the choice that they wanted to do or to go the road they wanted to go down.
Yeah. But I mean, specifically, like you remember when they're babies and you worry about, especially first-time parents, you're like worried about everything. Like, don't walk into this.
But not really worried about this.
You're not really worried about this, but it's like
not until later.
But we worry,
So for those older kids out there.
It's for the older kids. But I guess my point is that as parents, you're always worried about something. And there's different worries at different stages. And so today we're talking about the worry of teenagers and what kind of trouble they might be getting into. We're always worried about them, like for their safety, for their well-being, for their happiness. And as close as we feel with our kids, I think the eye-opening thing to realize is that there might be things going on that we don't know about.
That's right.
We don't know. Like, you know a lot when you're with them all day long, but once they go off to school, you don't know everything that's happening.
Just try to remember back when you were a teenager. You weren't telling your parents everything.
You weren't telling them everything. I was pretty close with my parents, actually.
I was too,
and they were
but it doesn't
very
mean
open-minded,
like,
so we could talk about a lot of things. But yes, it is true. Like there's things you're not going to talk about. I think that, if you're not feeling connected with your child, there's all the more reason to worry about what you don't know.
That's true.
So today, if you are wondering about your child eventually or currently using alcohol or drugs, you're probably thinking about how it can affect your family, how it can affect their life and their future. And you might even be wondering, like, where do you even begin when it comes to substance abuse and your kids? Like, where do you even start to address?
Yeah, warning signs, things to watch out for, education that you probably need to have with your kids about the consequences and effects that can happen in your life if you decide that that's something you want to get into.
Right. Well, that's why we have today's guest.
All right.
So his name is Richard Capriola, and he's the author of the book and a workbook called The Addicted Child. And it's essentially a roadmap to helping an adolescent who is addicted and how to help yourself as a parent get through it. And there's so much more. And we're going to be covering a lot of that today. And we will be covering, like you said, what are the warning signs of a child who might be abusing alcohol or drugs? And also, answering the questions why they might be doing it, how it affects them, how it affects their brain development, and most importantly, what do you do about it? If you're not even at that stage yet, maybe you have younger kids, how can you start talking about these things now? And it's actually a little bit different than I thought. So it's a very cool discovery.
It's going to be interesting.
It's going to be interesting. We've got something first, that we're going to do before we dive into the interview?
The secret letters.
Do you want to tell them what we're doing?
All right. So today we're going to pick an open letter. And for those of you that don't know what open letter is, you can go onto our website at everythingalways.co.
Yep. You click on forum.
And there is a section in there where you can submit an anonymous letter. Some of them are pretty gnarly and some of them are really sweet. So, I mean, we're getting a bunch of different styles. From full-blown rants to like, I know I can never say this. And we're like, I'm surprised you actually said that too.
We're going to have to figure out a new way to do this because we're almost not having enough because we read one a week in like each episode and we almost don't have we're getting too many letters for the episodes, but that's okay.
We kind of pick out the ones that stand out or whatever. There's been a few that are, yours aren't getting read. but we hear you and we feel you. But man, you got to
not to say they won't, but
you might consider counseling. Just a little counseling might help.
I think you should read this one because I feel like I always read them.
No. I hate reading. You do it. You're so good at it. You do it.
Okay. All right. I'll read this. All right. Here we go. I'm just writing this out to get it off my chest. Today was a really hard day. My stepson was so cold and rude to me, and it's happening more often as he becomes a teenager. Sometimes to the point where I am scared of his anger. He's slammed things before and has even broken things because of his temper. When my husband tried to discipline him, he gets furious. He hasn't hurt me or anyone in the house, but I worry that one day it will get there. His mom refuses to get him counseling, even though my husband insists he does. I don't have any kids of my own, so I don't really know if this is something normal that happens with teens, but I do know that the behavior should be punished. I have never said this to anyone before, so I'm saying it here. I really don't like being a stepmom. I really don't like my stepson. He is so mean, especially now, but I love my husband. I'm younger than my husband and wanted to have a child of my own with him, but scared of how my stepson will handle it. I don't know what to do. I know this isn't a place to ask for advice, but I've never told anyone this and listened to your podcast. I think this would be a good topic to discuss. Thank you. Yes.
Pretty good topic.
We have some things that are similar in some of our episodes where step-parents not getting along with their teens. However, this is something where you're feeling, almost unsafe. It sounds like in your home.
It sounds like they're coming together as a team in terms of what needs to happen.
I would say the best thing that I heard from this is that it seems like your husband and yourself are really aligned, and that's probably the most important place to start. Like we say often, unfortunately, you can't control what happens in the other home, but perhaps counseling for the two of you in some ways. Again, we're families going through this. We're not the experts.
I wish I had going like, man, I wish I had something really good to say.
I wish I did
not
too.
Sure I know.
I'm not sure what I know what to do this. I can tell you this. Don't feel guilty for saying, I don't like my stepson. That's another thing that happens. You're not obligated to. You're there as, a role model, and you're there as somebody who can care for. But I think this is something that really probably has to be left to the bio parents, and just to make sure that you and your husband are aligned in terms of how it's going to affect your future.
Trying to dig into the deeper roots of like what's causing that.
Yeah.
Maybe counseling really is a good idea.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. So our heart goes out to you. That is super, super tough. And we're wishing you all the best.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you so much for sharing. And let's dive into the interview.
Richard, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being with me today and discussing this so very important topic.
Thank you so much, Summer, for inviting me to the program to talk about adolescent substance abuse, which is a very important issue confronting parents and family members and so many other people in our country.
It is so true. And unfortunately, we're seeing more of it than ever before. I'd love to know, before we ask and we dive into these really important questions that I have, and I know that listeners would have as well, how did you get into this line of work, and how did this become something that was something so important to you?
Well, I began in this mental health addictions area over 2 decades ago when I was in Illinois. I was working for a regional mental health crisis center. And so many of the people who were coming to the crisis center from the emergency rooms, not only were they experiencing a mental health crisis, they were also involved with alcohol or drugs. So I went back to the University of Illinois, obtained a master's degree in addictions counseling, continued to work at the crisis center for a period of time until I was offered a job as an addictions counselor for Menninger Clinic in Houston, Texas. Menninger is one of the top 10 psychiatric hospitals in the nation. I worked for them for over a decade, treating both adolescents and adults diagnosed with both mental health and substance abuse issues. And many times I would meet with parents of adolescents, and after I went through the history of their child's substance abuse, they would say things like, I had no idea this was going on. Or
Yeah.
if they did suspect something was going on, they would say, well, I knew something was going on, but I didn't know it was this bad. So after I left Menninger, I wanted to write this book, which is only about 100 pages, but it's packed with a lot of information that's non-technical, doesn't weigh you down, gives you a quick overview of the critical elements of adolescent substance abuse so that a parent could read this very, very quickly and walk away with feeling like they understand this now. They've got this.
Gosh, it's, when you have young kids, you're like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. It's got to get easier as they get older. But really, it's different things that become harder. You might not be running around and chasing them and making sure they don't knock something over. But now it's like there's so many other things that you worry about because you're not with them all of the time. And like you said, so many parents are unaware. They had no idea. So
yeah.
What are the warning signs that parents and families can look out for to know that this might be on the radar?
Well, that's an important question. And throughout my book, I list warning signs. There's different warning signs, say for alcohol use. There's different warning signs if you suspect your child might be using marijuana. I list in the book warning signs for a child that might have an eating disorder or might be self-harming themselves, because many times eating disorders and self-injury will accompany alcohol and drug use. So I wanted parents to know what those specific warning signs are, and they're all contained in the book. But as a general rule, what I advise parents to do is pay attention to changes that you see in your child. Don't necessarily assume that these changes are just a result of normal adolescent development. They may very well be in a lot of cases, but then there are cases where these are warning signs of a much more different underlying issue. So when you see these changes, and some examples would be a child that in the past has been very social now becomes very isolating, a child whose grades were very good and now they start to drop, or maybe he or she's getting into trouble at school, a child who is very secretive about their friends when in the past you used to know who their friends were and they introduced you to them. So these are just some examples of general changes that I think parents need to be aware of. And when you see these changes, and the more of these changes that you see, those can be red flags that parents need to pay attention to and follow up on.
Yeah, definitely. Another thing too is that parents aren't even aware of what type of substances that their adolescents might be using. They might kind of go, oh, back in the day, I was sneaking alcohol, or, there was something that they're kind of thinking of things that they used to know it. But what are substances that parents might not be aware of that these kids are finding themselves using?
Well, alcohol and marijuana continue to be the most widely used substances among adolescents. Now, marijuana today is much different than what it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. It's much more powerful now. There are changes in the marijuana that we're seeing, but alcohol and marijuana still continue to be the primary substances. Now, kids are using to a much lesser extent things like LSD. Maybe 4% of seniors are using that. Cocaine, maybe 3% of seniors. A little bit higher with prescription drugs like Ritalin and Adderall, maybe 4% of seniors. But what we're noticing now in the last 3 years is a tremendous surge in adolescents turning to vaping substances. Vaping is where they use like an electronic device or something that looks like a USB. It turns the substance into a vapor and then they inhale it. That's vaping. And what we've seen is a tremendous increase just in the last 3 years of adolescents who are vaping nicotine and vaping marijuana. For example, 3 years ago, 18% of seniors were vaping nicotine. Today it's 34%. 3 years ago, 9% of seniors were vaping marijuana. Today, it's 22%. So these are dramatic increases as kids are turning more and more to vaping substances like nicotine and marijuana.
It also seems to me at younger ages. So it's not, for some, it's not even in those, high school teen years. It's even earlier.
It is, and parents need to be aware that when we're looking at preteens, the very young teenage years, even the young preteen age years, what we tend to see is children turning more to inhalants. And these are products that are easily and readily available around the home. And they give a very rapid but not long-lasting high, which means that kids who get into these substances tend to use them repeatedly over a short period of time. And because they're so young, maybe 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, their brain is much more vulnerable to substances because the adolescent brain is developing. Then as they grow older and they get into the teen years, they tend to move away from inhalants. And then that's when they might gravitate towards other drugs such as marijuana.
Because there's so much more technology available since when I was a kid. And, there was so much more when I was a kid than there was for my parents. So there was all of these ways to get out information. And I remember seeing, the after school specials and lots of awareness around how bad these things were for you and how it can really take you down the wrong path. And there's movies about it, TV shows, documentaries, all of that. And we have all of that out there. You have people sharing their stories, being vulnerable about it on social media. Why do you think, I know that it's readily available to them, but why do you think it's increasing?
Well, I think there are two things that are concerning to me. The first one you just mentioned, availability. These substances are readily available. Almost 80% of seniors will tell you it's either fairly easy or very easy for them to get marijuana if they want it. 30% will say it's easy for them to find LSD if they want it. And over 80% will tell you it's pretty easy for them to find alcohol. So these substances are widely available to these kids. Now, on top of that, they don't think that these substances are very harmful. So now we've got the substances being available and the perception among kids that they're not harmful. When we ask seniors, how harmful do you think it is to smoke marijuana regularly? Only 30% will tell you they think it's harmful. When we ask them, okay, well, how harmful do you think it is to have 1 or 2 drinks of alcohol nearly every day? Only 24% of seniors will tell you they think that's a great risk. So when you take the availability of drugs, that they're widely available and easy to get, and the perception among these kids that it's not very harmful, then you've created almost like a perfect storm.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what do you think are the reasons that they're doing it? So we now know, they don't even think it's that dangerous. What are the other reasons, that they're not only just trying it, but becoming so addicted to it?
Well, I think for some kids, it starts out as curiosity. They've heard about this. They want to explore it for themselves. They want to see, does it do anything for them? Does it get them high? So curiosity certainly is a part for some kids. For others, it might be peer pressure. They're hanging around with friends who are using it, and they may initially think they're not going to try it, but then over time, the peer pressure mounts up, and pretty soon they try it. And then when they try it, they either get a good experience or a bad experience. And if it's a good experience, they're more likely to try it again. Most of the teenagers that I worked with, because I was working in a psychiatric hospital, We're using substances to medicate an underlying issue. And that's why it's so important for parents to get a comprehensive assessment. You need to know what's going on. Why is your child using alcohol? Why is your child using a substance like marijuana? It may be in some cases that they're medicating an underlying issue. Many of the kids that I worked with who were smoking marijuana, when I asked them to help me understand why they were using marijuana, the number one answer that came back was, it helps me with my anxiety. It relieves my anxiety. So for some kids, it might be to medicate an underlying issue, which could be anxiety, could be depression, it could be trauma, it could be, being bullied. It could be a lot of different reasons. But that's why it's so important, and I stress this in my book, that a parent get a complete picture of what's going on. Get that comprehensive assessment. And my book identifies the specific assessments that a parent should look at, but get that comprehensive assessment done so that you can rule out things and rule in things and get a complete picture of what's going on with your child.
You've actually got a workbook that accompanies the book, correct?
I do, because so many of the parents that I worked with, in addition to having confronted the issue that their child is having a substance use issue, now they've got all these emotions to deal with. They struggle with, how did I miss the warning signs? Am I a good parent? Am I a bad parent? How do I deal with this anxiety that I feel every day and this worry? So I put together this workbook. And again, it's very short and concise, that helps them work through some of the emotions that they're dealing with. It has a few exercises on how to work with anxiety. And it also has information on how we can better communicate with our child. Summer, we're very good at listening to other people's words. So when our kids are talking to us, we hear their words, but do we hear the feelings behind those words? So there's some exercises that helps us tune into, when our child is speaking to us, hearing the feelings that are underneath the words. Don't just hear the words, hear the feelings behind the words, because when we can do that, our children begin to feel that we're truly understanding them.
Gosh, and that's what we all want, right? That's the feeling that we're really looking for, is to feel understood.
Yes, we want that. Our kids want that. And it can lay that foundation for having a good relationship and good communication with your child. And you can begin that process when your children are preteens, but even if they're in their late teens, it's never too late to develop that skill and work on developing that type of communication with your child.
Have you ever wanted to send an anonymous message or letter to someone? For me, the most powerful therapy has always been to write. If I feel angry, sad, super inspired, or just wanting to feel understood, I write, and often I write letters to someone when those feelings involve a particular person. When it comes to divorce, co-parenting, step-parenting, new relationships, and everything that comes along with blended families, there tends to be a lot we don't say and a lot we wish we could say. And it feels so good writing a letter as if you were going to send it to that person. It's like this huge pressure off of your chest. It's kind of cathartic. Well, we want to offer you that forum where you can have a voice, anonymously, of course. If there's something you've always wanted to say to someone, but knew that out of respect or to save drama or because you knew it wouldn't be received well, now is your chance to get it out there and have it be read, because we would like to serve as your voice. So here's what to do. Head over to everythingalways.co/forum. That's FORUM, everythingalways.co/forum, and fill out the form. We won't know who you are, as it will be sent to us totally anonymously. It just hits our inbox, but we have no idea who it's coming from. As they come in, we will be sharing these on the podcast. We'll be able to reply to you. You'll still remain anonymous unless you reply back. And we'll let you know if it will be featured. It's 100% confidential. So what do you say? Ready to get it off your chest? Okay, back to the episode.
I'm curious, we talked about what types of drugs they were abusing. I don't remember if you mentioned this or not, but opioids, that's a big one that goes down a very, very, very dangerous path. What are you seeing there? Because I've heard stories. I even a few years ago actually did a documentary covering a family who lost their son in his early 20s because in high school, as a football player, he got addicted to painkillers. It started with Vicodin. It started with a knee surgery that went to painkillers. That had then friends started using the painkillers, and it became this party to do this. But with opioids, enough isn't enough. It keeps going, it keeps going, it keeps going. What are you seeing there? Because I think that's it's all frightening when any of these substances are abused. But this one tends to be extremely frightening because it's something that kids can just find in their parents' medicine cabinet.
That's an excellent point, Summer. We're not seeing a lot of it. For example, we're seeing maybe 1% of seniors who say that they're taking Vicodin. Maybe 2% of seniors admit to taking Oxycontin. But there is some of that out there. I think the danger is exactly what you just mentioned. If you have any type of prescription drugs or really any type of medication in the home, as a parent, you need to secure those drugs. You need to keep them secure from your child because your child may be getting into them and you have no idea of what's going on. I've seen that happen many times. Some children are taking the medicine from their medicine cabinet and they're selling it to other kids. So it is a potential danger, and parents are advised to keep any medications and any liquor, any alcohol secure, because these kids are very clever at flying under the radar. And before you know it, some of the medicine in your medicine cabinet is gone and some of the liquor in your liquor bottles is gone too. But a lot of the opiate use that we see, not just with children, but with adults, many times starts with a prescription and then it becomes abused and then the tolerance builds up. And before you know it, a person has become really dependent on an opiate drug.
Yeah, it's so scary. Do you think that these teens, adolescents doing this, do you think that they understand how this impacts their life?
No, they don't. They don't see it as anything that is impacting their lives. And it gets back to what's the difference between adult addiction and adolescent addiction. Mm-hmm. And there's two big differences. The first is in brain development. We discussed that a little bit. The adolescent brain is not fully developed, whereas the adult brain is fully developed. So when we talk about the difference in adult versus adolescent addiction, one is the difference in brain development. But the second difference is in consequences. Adults who are addicted to a substance have many times faced catastrophic consequences. They may have lost a marriage, they may have lost a job, they may have been incarcerated. Adolescents, on the other hand, they've faced very few consequences other than perhaps their parents coming down on them or restricting them, which then often results in more adversity between the parent and the child. So kids do not think that there are any consequences to their use other than their parents.
Yeah. It's unfortunate that happens with a lot of things in life. You experience the consequence before you realize, I don't want to experience that consequence.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, what can parents do? Because I think that the struggle too is that parents don't want to be nagging. They don't want to be, oh, they're so annoying. They're so paranoid. They don't want to be that person to their kids, but they don't know how else to communicate. Hey, this is hardcore. If you do this, this is what can happen. And if you go down this path, you're going to end up, homeless. You're going to end up, in jail. There's all these things. And most kids, like you said, because they haven't experienced any of that yet, it's kind of like, no, that's not going to happen to me. I'm fine. What can parents do to not be overboard, yet still be on that, hey, I understand you, I hear you, but please don't do this?
Yeah, exactly. I think, first of all, become aware of what's going on. Get a copy of my book and read it so that you know what the warning signs are. You know how the brain works, how the adolescent brain works. You know what resources are out there in the event that you need them. And then begin to develop this good, solid relationship with your child that's based upon good communication so that, if a problem develops, a child feels comfortable talking to you about it. And then be quick to act on any warning signs that you pick up on as a parent. any of these changes that you see, don't neglect them. Don't write them off, but follow up and get an assessment done. And if you have any concerns at all, talk to your school counselor, talk to your family physician, get the referrals that you need, and get an assessment done so that you can get on top of this as early as you can as a parent.
Right, right. It's stressful to think about just your kids becoming that age, or that they could face this one day, and then let alone actually discovering that your child does have this addiction. If a parent is in that place where they've discovered that this is happening, what are some of the best ways? And I'm sure, there's more that you could say that we could cover in this amount of time, but what are some ways that they can be supportive and not push their child away at the same time?
I think that what children want to know, for example, when we ask children, teenagers, what is it that keeps you from talking to your parents about things that are troubling you? What is it that keeps you from having that talk with them? The answer that generally comes back is a fear of being judged. They have a fear that their parents are going to judge them. So what we want to do as parents is to let our kids know that there is no judgment here. If they're using a substance, we're more interested in understanding why they're using the substance than we are in terms of judging them for using it. And that takes time to develop that type of foundation in that relationship. But as parents, I think what we want to do is learn, what is behind any of our child's behaviors. We don't want to just focus on the behavior. We want to know what's driving it, what's behind it. And that's a skill that every parent can learn.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think that's one of the biggest things with addiction at any age is that feeling of shame and judgment. And that feeling alone pushes people away because you just feel undeserving of it.
And I would also say that, it's very unusual that we would find a child that's truly addicted. That's a very stigmatizing term. We don't we don't diagnose anybody, child or adult, as being an addict. That is not a diagnosis. Your child will never be diagnosed as an addict. They will have, if it's applicable, a substance use disorder that will either be mild or moderate or severe. So that'll be the diagnosis. But not every child that's using a substance is even in the severe category. Many of them are in the mild to moderate category. So parents need to understand and know that if their child is using a substance, they're not addicted. They may not even have a substance use disorder that's severe. Now, some of them do, but probably many of them are in the mild to moderate category, which means that if you are able to intervene at an early stage, you're more likely to get that child away from the substances that they're using.
Yeah. Do you think that parents, we were talking earlier about they had no idea. Have you seen that parents might have an idea, but it's too painful to accept that their child or adolescent might be involved in these substances, that there is denial?
I think in certain cases, there is denial going on. They may have a suspicion. They may even know that their child is using a substance, but because they don't have the information, they don't have the complete picture, they don't have the assessments, they have no idea of how extensive this is. And then that comes back to startle them later. Like I said earlier, many of the parents would say to me, I had no idea this was going on, or I knew something was going on, but I didn't know it was this bad. And I think part of that is because they sort of don't want to accept the fact that their child is using marijuana or drinking alcohol. Or if they are, they suspect, well, I don't think it's really that bad. I haven't seen any negative consequences, so it can't be that bad. The problem with that is you don't want to wait as a parent until you see those negative consequences, until you see those severe consequences. It's gone too far at that point.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about some cases or families that you have worked with where you've seen, a full transformation, from this is where we were, we had no idea, we discovered. I'm sure you have some of those stories, and what changes were made and how it ended up being, a really good thing.
Well, I think in a lot of cases, the parents have come to the realization that we need to get something done. This has gone far enough. We need to get something done for both the child and for us as parents, because the child might be the one who's abusing the substance, but the entire family is affected. So we need to get help for everybody. And I think also with time, I have seen kids move from what we call the pre-contemplation stage of change, which is denial. The kid will say, "That's not a problem. I don't know what the big deal is. I know my parents don't like it, but I'm not going to quit." They've moved from that pre-contemplation to the contemplation stage, which is, okay, I know it's a problem. I'm not sure what I want to do. Maybe I want to quit. Maybe I don't, but at least I'll keep an open mind. That's a huge move for a child, to move from denial into that stage. And I've seen a lot of kids make that move. And when they do, it opens up the door to further treatment. So, I want parents to know that if they suspect anything's going on, intervene as quickly and as early as you can, because your child can grow out of this, and with help and support they can move beyond it.
Yes. Now let's talk about the family, the siblings, the parents. What can they do for support for themselves, because they're being there to support their child? How do they support other family members involved as well as themselves?
That's a good point, because many times, I would say almost always, the family needs some type of support and treatment as well. You have the parents who are really struggling with this issue. You have siblings that are affected by it as well. So the substance abuse might be affecting only the child, the actual abuse itself, but the entire family system is brought into the picture and faces, the dilemma of dealing with it as well. So while the child, the person using the drugs, the adolescent using the alcohol or marijuana or drugs, they need the help and the treatment, the family also, in many times, will need treatment as well to help them cope with and learn how to go through this crisis.
Yeah, because, we were talking earlier about the child themselves having this fear of judgment and shame. And the parents have that as well, because they're feeling I've failed as a parent.
Yes, they also have that same feeling, and sometimes they need help in overcoming that too. And they need help with being able to work through many of these feelings that they're going through. And oftentimes that's neglected. Oftentimes these parents don't have that support and they don't have that help.
How do you suggest, in those earlier years, that we talk to our children early on about alcohol and drugs, because they'll be around it. They'll be, once people are having big gatherings again, they'll see adults, drinking wine, having alcohol. What are healthy ways to talk to your kids about this without, scaring them, scaring them into doing it?
Well, what I found is, depending on the age of the child, they really pick up on the neuroscience of this stuff. It doesn't do much good to tell them it's illegal and that they're going to get into trouble and all of that. They've heard it before. But what I found, what really works is to help them understand how this stuff works in their brain and how it can affect things like short-term memory and processing speed of the brain and coordination, because they seem to be interested in the science behind it. They seem to be interested in, how does this stuff work inside my body and my brain, and what are the consequences of use? That, I think, tends to capture their attention much more so than it's illegal and it's going to do this and it's going to do that. Teach them the neuroscience of it, so that they begin to understand how these substances work in the brain, how their brain works, and how these substances can interfere with their brain working to the best of its ability.
Yeah, that's really interesting. What about, as parents, our own behavior?
Well, that's an important point, because the child is going to react to how we react too. And I think what we need to do as parents is let our children know that we understand them. We're there to support them. We don't necessarily condone this behavior, but we are concerned about it, and we are there to support them and to help them if they will do their part of it too. So it becomes a teamwork approach.
Yes, absolutely. Wow, there's so much good stuff here. I can only imagine what what the book contains. Speaking of which, what is the best way for listeners to land themselves a copy of your book?
The easiest way is to go to the book's website, which is www.helptheaddictedchild.com. www.helptheaddictedchild.com. There you'll find resources, you'll find information about me, you'll find endorsements from psychiatrists and psychologists, you'll find book reviews, you'll find a link so that if you want to send me a message, you can. And you can order both the book and the workbook from the website. The book is available in electronic form. I think it's like less than $4, or you can, if for people who prefer the paperback, they can get that for, I think, less than $10. And they can also order the parent workbook. So all of those are available through Amazon. You can also order them directly from the website itself.
Perfect. Helptheaddictedchild.com. And we'll make sure that we have a link to that in our show notes as well. Richard,
Great.
Is there anything else that you think is really, really important for our parent listeners to hear?
No, I think we've covered a lot of the basics. I appreciate your comments and your thoughts on it and your contributions. I think that helped make this hopefully more meaningful. And I would just encourage people to learn about this subject and to be better prepared. I think knowledge is power. So the more knowledge we can have as parents, the better we're prepared for what may come down the road.
Absolutely. I agree. Thank you so much for joining me today. I know that this has brought so much value to our listeners.
I hope so. Thank you. Thank you again, Summer. And thank you for your contributions. I think they were very helpful too.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. And we like to say, if you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone you love and be bold enough to share it with someone you don't. See you next time.